Our next practicum project provides some hands-on practice with assembling strings in the 4 ways that we've looked at: concatenation, string format, interpolation, and using the StringBuilder class. We're going to create an application in which the user enters a first name, a last name, an occupation, and the age of the person, clicks the Build the Strings button, and we're going to get 8 different outputs, 2 each using concatenation, string format, interpolation, and StringBuilder. And within each of those methodologies, we're going to have a single line output, and then another one in which we get to use vbCrLF to create multiple lines. If you look at the output between the concatenation, the String.Format method, interpolation, and the StringBuilder class, you'll notice that they appear the same in all 4 cases. I give you some code snippets to help you with concatenation, string format, string interpolation, and StringBuilder. We're going to build our interface, we're going to code it, and test and debug. That's our project instructions. Let's take a look at the app running. Here's my application running in Visual Studio. I'm going to enter a first name, a last name, an occupation, and an age. Click the Build the Strings, and for each of the concatenation, string format, interpolation, and StringBuilder class, we get a single line of output in which we use the occupation, the first name, the last name, and the age. So psychiatrist Helen Jackson is 35 years old. And we get that in all 4 as the same. But then there's another field here that is multiple lines, and we're going to get the first name and last name, and then on the second line, the occupation, colon, and their occupation, and then age, colon, and their age on the third line. And you'll see again that's the same in all 4 methodologies. I'm going to suggest you pause the video here, try this on your own. If you struggle, come back and watch my code review, which will be the rest of this video. Or if you just want to compare your answer to mine, again, watch my code review. My Form 1 has a size of 650, 850, so 650 in width, 850 in height. It has a text property of string assembly in 4 ways for our caption on the title bar. I created a label, just some basic information. Another label, actually these are all labels for our text boxes. None of those are named, but here we have a text box named txt first name, txt last name, txt occupation, txt age, and then a button named btn build. I have labels for concatenation, string format, interpolation, and StringBuilder class, and then under each of those I have a label called label concatenated 1, label concatenated 2. This one is label formatted 1, label formatted 2, label interpolated 1, label interpolated 2, and as you may have guessed, this one is LBL StringBuilder 1 and LBL StringBuilder 2. Let's take a look at the code for the button. So we have our 4 fields for input. I'm going to take the first name and the last name, take those 2 text boxes, and take the text property and assign them to variables fn and ln. This will shorten some of our code a little bit. I didn't do the same with txt age or txt occupation. I want to show that you can use the text property of text boxes or labels in our string assemblies as well as string variable and literal strings. So here's my concatenated output. LBL concatenated 1.text equals, we take the text of txt occupation, we're going to concatenate to that just a space. So quote, space, quote, a literal string of just a space. Concatenate to that our value of fm, which is our first name. Concatenate another literal space. Concatenate our value of ln. And then a string of space is space. We want to make sure we get those spaces in there so things don't run together. The text property of txt age, and then concatenating to that space years old period. For the second concatenated one where we want the multiple lines, I'm going to say fn, adding a space to that, and ln, and then here's where we use the vbCrLF, the Visual Basic Carriage Return line feed. That gives us down to, that drops us down the next line. We have a little string of occupation, concatenated to that txt occupation text property, and another vbCrLF takes us to the third line, little string of age, and concatenating to that txt age.text. That builds our 2 concatenated output labels. String format, we're going to use String.Format, and here in the parentheses, this is a method, so the argument in the parentheses is I'm using some placeholders inside of curly brackets. So 0, 1, 2 is element 3 years old. I conclude my string, put a comma, and then the value that is going to be element 0, which in this case is txt_occupation.text. Element 1 is my value of fn, element 2 is the value of ln, and then element 3 is the text property of txt_age. Those are all commas separated. Same thing here for our multi-line for string format. The difference is I'm adding in vbCrLF as my second output. So 0 here is first name, 1 is last name. The 2 is a vbCrLF constant that gives me down the next line, occupation. 3 is going to be occupation text. Then I'm going to use 2 again, so it goes back and references that vbCrLF, and then we get age, and our element 4 is txt_age.text. So we can use these elements multiple times in our String.Format output string. Here's the interpolated one. So I'm setting LBL interpolated 1.text to $. Then my output string is txt_occupation.text in curly brackets, a space, fn, a space, ln, space is space, then txt_age.text in curly brackets, and space years old period. So the multi-line interpolated, LBL interpolated 2.text, again using a $, and then my string is the value of fn, the value of ln with the space in between. I have a space here going to the vbCrLF. I don't really need that. I can get rid of it. Visual Basics carriage return line feed takes me down to the second line. Occupation colon space, the value of the text property of txt_occupation text box. Then another vbCrLF takes me down to the third line. Age colon space, and the value of txt_age.text. As I mentioned before, I like the interpolated output. I think it's really clean. It's a little less work than doing the String.Format output. I do use concatenation a lot simply because I've been doing this for several decades, and it used to be that concatenation was the only way to do this. Then we have StringBuilder output. We're using the StringBuilder class. I'm going to create a StringBuilder object. So I'm dimming SB1 as StringBuilder and setting it to a new StringBuilder and passing it the value of txt_occupation.text. So my string now consists of the text property value for txt_occupation. Then I can use the append method to adding stuff to my SB1 object. So this first line, when I did dim SB1 as StringBuilder, it's creating a StringBuilder object for me. This gets into object-oriented programming, which we'll talk much more about down the road. But I just want to show you there's a fourth way of doing string assembly using object-oriented programming. So I'm going to concatenate or append a space, the first name, a space, and the last name. So I'm using some concatenation here in my append statement. I can also use interpolation. I could also use String.Format in my append statements. Then I'm going to append to that space is space, and append to that the value of the text property of txt_age, and then years old period. And then I'm going to output SB1.toString. This is a StringBuilder object. It's not a string, so I have to convert it to a string. And it'll take that basically a string we assembled in the StringBuilder object and assign that to the text property of my LBL output label. Doing the same thing this time, I'm going to do SB2 as StringBuilder. And here I'm adding in, starting off that first line, fn and a space, ln and vbCrLF, or append to that the line. Now, notice I used append up here. Here I'm going to use append line. And the difference is the append line automatically puts the vbCrLF at the end of the line. Now, if I used append here, instead of append line, I'd have to add a vbCrLF at the end of my argument, which is occupation colon space and the text property of txt_occupation. But the append line puts that carriage return line feed, so it takes me down to when I'm appending, I'm now on my third line. And here I'm going to append String.Format age colon space. I'm going to use the placeholder 0 and use txt_age.text. I simply use String.Format here to, again, just use a different methodology. I could have used concatenation. I could have used interpolation there. to build that string argument for the append method. And then I'm setting the text property of my second LBL string builder output label to sb2.toString. 4 ways of doing the same thing. Use the one that you like best. Again, I kind of like interpolated output. You'll see me use that a lot, along probably with concatenation. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.